I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Any discussion, any adjustments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Could I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes of 10:17 and 10:03?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from 10:17
Is it-
and
How
about just 10
for October
how about just 10:03?
Just 10:03. I'm just reading down the list.
10:17 was very good.
We already got this. 10:03. Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. School committee chairperson comments. And we have a lot of people, so I'll not say anything and we'll move right on. All right, community comments. Anybody from a community comment perspective? No? Well, then we'll move on to student comments. And I see we have the Misco Hill Middle School students here, so step right up.
Well, thank you all. And this is a great group of students. We have Anastasia Quimby. Anastasia, give us a wave. We have Zach DeWitt. There's Zach, Nadia Khan, Charlotte Reed, Sam Potter, and Peyton Shanahan. And they brought along two adults. They brought Mr. Mulligan and Mr. McNeil, our two sixth grade math teachers. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to them so they can talk to you about a project-based learning unit that they are currently engaged in. So this unit has not come to completion yet, but they're going to tell you about the process so far and what's been going this way. Mr. O'Neill, I'll give you one of these for this time. Jane, if you want.
So we started with the real world problems. The little learners, the preschool needed an update on their playground. Compare this to your textbook real world problem. For example, a 100 by 50 rectangle. That's easy. We had this shape, which is hard to find the area of.
Sam.
So we went outside.
Sam, will you turn toward your audience and tell them? Thanks, bud.
We went outside and we needed to see what we were working with. So we saw this shape and we knew that the little learners wanted a bridge and like a new sandbox because they always kept tripping over it. And so we needed to see what we could change that.
Then we started doing like some lessons on gizmos to try and figure out the area of like simple shapes like rectangles and squares and triangles.
And then we moved on to some harder shapes like parallelograms and triangles. And once we got more comfortable with those, we started to move on to like dogs, cats, and shapes like that.
We started on the grid, and then we moved to off the grid so that we could figure out how to find the area of that complex shape. And we also divided that into triangles so we could help understand how to find the area of that weird shape.
And after we found out the area of the weird shape, which was 5,133, we started to try, we started making it up into little like sections. And once we made up into little sections and we found the area of that, we started to look online for like new stuff for the little learners to like play with.
Hold on. You guys want to keep going? Want to talk to that slide? I will.
Just.
Spaces, remember spaces.
Okay, as you can see here, it's a few examples of the drawings we created. So we built it into, it was like just a little paper to see like where we wanted to put the stuff, and like if we wanted turf or like rubber for the ground. And this section is for the 3 to 4 year olds. This section is for the 1 to 2 year olds. And we started thinking about spaces to put the stuff in.
Number 7.
What about like that big? Like that. So like there would be bridge on one side.
In the video, it was basically explaining that we were using tiles on the floor to try to find out how big our sandbox would be for them. How many square?
So as you can see, the kids have been working really hard on their projects. We're not done yet. Next steps are space plans, as you saw the folks talking about. They're going to be calculating costs for the materials that they are recommending be used. And then they're going to be putting together proposals to submit to Mrs. Whitney and the Little Learner staff for their consideration. And project-based learning, the whole idea is that we have real-world, personally meaningful projects to the kids. And because of those things, we end up having greater investment. There's authenticity to the work that they're doing, and the kids also have voice and choice in what they're doing.
And it ties directly to the Mass curriculum framework. So, we have a standard for geometry where they have to find the area of triangles and parallelograms and use composition and decomposition, breaking up shapes that are not traditional rectangles and squares into, parallelograms or triangles that they can then determine the area of. And we felt that this project just nailed that standard.
That's our project.
That's it.
Wow, that's great, fantastic. So what do you enjoy most about what you've done so far?
I guess going outside, seeing it, and figuring out the costs, I guess.
Probably like the designing of like the new playground, like figuring out where we want to place everything. That was pretty fun. So.
I also just like how we can not, instead of just writing math problems down in a book, how we have a chance to experiment with different things and try new things.
Yeah. And I like how we could use a real world life problem and not a problem.
Like a lot of fun. It's like a great project. When will it be done?
Got a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
We said with those next steps, we're weaving them in with our standard Desmos lessons so that we're continuing our work from surface area to surface area next. So we'll be ready to give to little learners pretty soon.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can just add, I was really lucky to be able to walk into one of the classes when they were working on some of the aspects of this. So in our walkthroughs, we came through and we walked by and everything, all the learning was just coming to life. And we said, let's go into what's happening in there. And they started coming up and talking to us, asking questions about budget. And I said, talk to us. talked about accessibility, issues and things that you have to do with different materials and things that, adding beyond the mathematical concepts that obviously they just displayed there. So thank you for taking on the Pbl Unit.
One of my favorite moments is walking in as principal and seeing kids really animated, excited about something on the iPad and have them not swipe out of it when I arrived. On Amazon, looking to see what would be the best purchase for the space that they have and the intent, so we're really proud of that.
That's great. Very good. All right. And now on to our other student representatives.
Yay.
We have a new student representative, Fallon Clark, so welcome. Unfortunately, she was sick last time. She was very upset to miss the first meeting. She's here, ready to go, and we're excited to have her here with us. So welcome.
Thank you so much. So my name is Fallon Clark. I am a junior at Nipmuc, and some of the things that I do at Nipmuc to get involved are I'm part of the cheer team, and I'm a two-sport athlete here, but most importantly, I'm the president of our business club called DECA. And some of the more fun things that we are doing upcoming in October and November to show that DECA is a well-rounded organization and to get students connected towards it with not only fundraising for themselves, but for other people. Nipmuc is hosting a muscular dystrophy fundraiser. It's a 5K coming up in October, and we already have plenty of students who are willing to participate, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We also have a dodgeball tournament coming up for a cardiology foundation to hopefully raise money for that too. And around school, we're selling apparel to raise money for endometriosis. So that just shows how we are kind of trying to give back in more ways than one. And then on the 28th of October, we are attending a Fall State Leadership Conference that will be hosted at Pbl University. And that gives students an opportunity to tour the campus, to network with plenty of students from around the state, and to attend workshops. There are numerous workshops that you can go to, and there will be a special guest speaker for us.
Okay. And then the updates I have are that there's a parent-teacher conference at Nipmuc. So that's on Wednesday, November 9 from 11:45 to 2:15. And then there is another one Thursday, November 10th, and that's from 6 to 8. And then parents have a choice to do either virtually or in person. And the signups will be shared next Monday. And this is really exciting. The Nipmuc Drama Guild will be presenting their first fall production, She Kills Monsters, and that's during the Halloween weekend, October 28th at 7 p.m. And then there's another one at October 29th, 2 on that day, 2:30 and then 7 p.m. The tickets are $15 for adults and then $10 for students and seniors.
It's great to hear. Thank you. Any questions? No? All right. Then I will pass it over to Dr. Cohen.
All right, thank you. We have lots of exciting events happening tonight. We started with our students, and next we'd like to call up Diane Duncan and any other representatives of We Care Misco that might be here. All right, so if you can come up here, you can. Any other helpers that are here? We have Stacy, Michelle. You can come on up too. All right, yeah, sure. That's perfect because we want to get you right on.
Can we get the other side?
Whatever works for you.
Either side.
I can zoom in as much as possible.
We just had a mini celebrate, well, not mini, a big celebration. Down the hall, so you may hear a few things, but so everyone at home and everyone here can hear a little bit about this as well. But the committee was formed in 2018, originally was a Misco Beautification Committee and was renamed We Care Misco in 2019 to better reflect their mission, which was to let Misco staff and students know that we all care about their working environment. We're willing to take actions to make improvements in pride, aesthetics, and function in the aging Misco building. This past summer, a group of volunteers painted over 40 doors in all the trim and gave the lobby an amazing facelift, and that's why we wanted to make sure. This is located on our the Misco PTO site, but on the We Care Misco page, so you can see all the 40 or more pictures of all the work and all the volunteers that have contributed to the work, particularly in the transformation of the lobby in the school. And none of this would have happened without contributions by local organizations, companies, donations, volunteers, and district support. It's been working on project now for over 4 years. It's hard to believe, it feels like, it's been, so much has been done in the last year or so, but I remember, and we talked about just in the other room, the transformation of the staff room and the faculty room where our staff go, and that transformation, and I'm sure Diane Lions Club funded our most extensive project yet, the lobby facelift project. It was supplemented with local donations and volunteers, and door painting was fueled entirely by volunteers in Mendon-Upton. And I heard there were a lot of doors in Misco. Earlier tonight, more than we thought. And a lot of this is what Diane wrote up and is on this page, so I'm just kind of sharing what she had shared about some of the work. Because it's never about Diane. She's so much about service and other people and the we aspect of the We Care Misco. But so many people in the community just came together because they wanted to honor her leadership in pushing a lot of these forward and like everywhere and get things done. And amazing. So there were businesses that donated materials like Pelk's Painting, Koopman's, Chris Moran Design, Ace Hardware. Individuals gave way more time than they truly had time for, is what she wrote, like Stacy Oliva, Joe,
Bonapace,
Zach Pelk, Mark Machado, Lou Carrera, Dina Everett Neveau, and her husband Mike, Stephen Abbott, and my whole family. Not my family. Not making doors. But my 2 cents I have to throw in there, and hers are far better than mine, and all the input that we had from others as well. So on behalf of the school committee and school district, we just want to publicly thank you, Diane, and We Care Misco, and please, pass that along to all the volunteers there this evening. Tonight we have Senator Moore, and we also have Representative Ryan Murray, who are here with a couple.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It was Winston Churchill who said, at first we shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us. And I don't think that that's more truer than in this instance tonight, where the Misco Hill School was built some 60-odd years ago to educate and nurture the young people of this community. Well, what happened over time, the community decided to educate and nurture the building that had given so much to the community and really has shaped the lives of all of these folks who are working for the benefit of not only the students, but the staff. So Diane, from what I understand, you are the ringleader of this group. And I have a citation from the House of Representatives to commemorate your great work. It reads as follows: be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offer its sincerest congratulations to Diane Duncan in recognition of your dedicated service to We Care Misco, which seeks to improve pride, aesthetics, and function at the Misco Hill Middle School for the benefit of both students and staff. The entire membership extends its very best wishes, expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success. It's given the 17th day of October. This is signed by Ronald Mariano, Speaker of the House, offered by State Representative David Meridian, who unfortunately is unable to be here tonight due to a commitment to be at the Grafton Town Meeting, and myself, State Representative Brian Murray. Diane, congratulations.
Thank you.
How are we doing?
I wasn't expecting this.
It's a nice pleasant surprise, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very pleasant surprise. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and thank you for all this from the kids and the school and the community. I guess this is a perfect example of how it only takes one person. It takes a lot of effort from the community to do things, but sometimes that one person can really reach out to the community members and bring them forward and bring out that community spirit. I think what we all like to think about in our hometown, that we have people here who are willing to sacrifice and dedicate their time. And there's always reasons for not doing something. I think this is a great example of how, whatever those reasons are, you can always overcome them. And so, again, thank you on behalf of doing that for the children in the community. And I have from the State Senate an official citation, be it known, the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Diane Duncan in recognition of your embodiment of the We Care Misco mission statement and your leadership for positive change. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to and a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate, signed by the Senate President, Senator Karen Spilka, Senator Fatman, who had another commitment. I don't know what it was, but she had another commitment. And also myself, and congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you. To do with this, thank you. I don't even know what to say. I think I say the same thing over and over, that We Care Misco it's nothing without the we. And I can have all the ambition to make change and want things to get better, but the only way that things get better is when people come out and help and support and volunteer and be a part of positivity and things that make an environment, a learning environment, which is even more important, a better place for students and staff. So I am beyond humbled tonight. I didn't expect any of this. So I'm a little overwhelmed, but
Might be
like,
the first time.
But one of the best byproducts, and I just said this to Stacy Oliva and Michelle Rubin, who were two We Care Misco volunteers that have amazing vision for spaces and how change can be brought about and like what resources you will need to make that all happen. And they just stuck with every single project I threw at them. But one of the best byproducts of We Care Misco is I met a million people I've never met before that are all amazing. And I walked away with an even greater pride in our community, in our Mendon-Upton community, because when we needed people to step up, they did. And the change, I really feel it now that I'm in Misco as much as I am, when people just have more pep in their step and they say things like, it's just a different feeling when you walk into the lobby right now. Like there's just a different feeling about the environment that you're walking into. So that's why I wanted to do this, because your environment does matter.
it affects learning, it affects your emotions, it affects how you feel when you walk in. But again, I could have all the ambition and drive in the world to want to change things, but you're not going to get anywhere without the people in the we. So I am grateful to the Mendon-Upton community for stepping forward to not just volunteer, but to like Upton Men's Club and Koopmans and all the local businesses that gave to this effort. And it didn't cost taxpayers a single dime, because having been through several overrides in the towns of Mendon and Upton, I know that that's a tough sticking point. So this was a way to improve our schools without costing anybody anything, except for, like I said, sweat equity. So thank you all. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you for coming out.
Our student council students presented Diane with a sweatshirt tonight that says Misco runs on Duncan.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to jump into some other district updates, maybe not as exciting, but that's okay. I feel like there are a few thank yous that I'd like to, throw out there. There's a lot of different things going on in the last couple of weeks. One, wanted to thank Dell Computers. We received a donation from them of 1,500 COVID home test kits. And one thing that was nice about it was that the dates were a little bit further on. So we've been receiving some donations from different local companies, and that's been helpful for us to just have that at home. A distraction for pictures. So I just want to thank them for that. And if you know of other businesses that are looking to make those similar type of donations, we will take them, and then we can have them on hand if we need test kits, or if there's a time when we need more. So that's been helpful. I want to thank Dave Quinn. He's been working really hard, and he talked about this, I think, at the last meeting, to coordinate STEM week activities. And we have students participating both from Misco Hill and Nipmuc. We had some problems at first getting transportation, and he reached out I don't know if you remember where, thank you so much for coming. He reached out, and we are getting some help from Hopedale. We're going to join with them, and I think maybe with Milford as well, but I know we're getting some local help to have our students go into Boston, and sometimes it's hard to get buses to take students into Boston on certain days, and so we're collaborating with them. He's been working really hard on that, and we're just excited for what we'll learn from that as well. Jay shared this with me. I don't know where Jay is, right here, but Clough School is part of a HVAC upgrade to the computer management system through a Mendon Green Community Grant project. And this work should improve the operations of the HVAC controls at Clough, so we're excited to be able to be a part of that. And just want to give a highlight and thank Megan Pike. Megan Pike is our new Spanish immersion coordinator in the district, and she's been assisting and supporting. We have a number of new Spanish immersion teachers this year from Spain, and she's been having lots of meetings with them. I've also met with them as well. And we have an upcoming SI Advisory Board meeting scheduled for this Wednesday night. And we're also working with families, or younger families that are looking to kind of learn more about the program. But we also have a new representative at the embassy that we've been meeting with as well. So we have a lot in the works related to Spanish immersion and some updates and subcommittees that we'll be having members of the board working on. So we'll give you updates throughout the year. So those are just some quick district updates before I move on. I don't know if you have any questions about any of those items. Thanks. So next, I'm going to be keeping you in the loop on this for the next month. We have our district comprehensive accountability review timeline. We've been selected for the accountability review for this school year. So DESE has contracted with the American Institute for Research, or AIR, to conduct a comprehensive review of our district. So our site visit's scheduled. We're really lucky to have it early in the year. It is the week of November 14th. The good news with that coming up so quickly, although it's going to be a lot of work in the next couple weeks, is that it's possible we'll get some of the details before the end of the school year. Usually, I think it's like 5 months or 6 months when they come out with about a 100-page report. If you are so inclined, you can read the 100-page reports that are located on our website. I can share it with you from all the other districts that have gone through the review. But we're hoping that it will be helpful. So we asked to be a little bit earlier in the year. I was kind of hoping for January, but we're lucky to have the November date. And that will give us some data that we can add into our strategic planning I'll talk about later on as well. I counted up, close to 80 to 100 documents we'll be sharing. Which is really exciting to gather. Fortunately, we have most of them when I looked at the list, so that's great. It's one part that we learned about the review. So it's really made up of 3 parts. We have classroom observations and the site visits. So similar to, if you recall, NEASC visit, they come in and they'll be observing, except it won't be just at the high school, it'll be in all the schools. There's also the review of all the documentation that we'll send to them. And then they will have interviews with individuals, all different stakeholders and focus groups at all the schools. So Cheryl and I met with their liaison today, and we were able to get a little bit more details and start developing what that schedule would look like for the week. And so once we have that, we'll share that out. There is a portion that would be a school committee focus group. It would only be 3 school committee members, although school committee members could go to like the parent focus group too if you wanted to as well. I'll talk to you as we get a little bit closer of what might be a good time, but we can do that one virtually. And some can be virtual for the parents and others would be in person, and they have teams that come here to the district. And what is the purpose of it all? So data collections associated with understanding how district system structures and practices operate to support our district continuous improvement efforts. They will be looking at things like our strategic plan and then school improvement plans that we're presenting. So those are all the documents that we'll be sharing. And what they do is I'm going to just kind of skip down. The 6 standards that they will be looking at are leadership and governance, curriculum and instruction. And so that'll be things like our curriculum review processes that you've heard in the past, or mentoring and induction, or the DCAPs, one of the documents we have to share, our assessment process. So we'll be sharing with them the different assessments we use and the data cycle and inquiry cycles that you'll be hearing about that we work on. Human resources, some of our processes with that, as well as our professional development plans, student support in that department, and as well as some financial and asset management documents as well, and facility management. And so we'll be providing that, and I'll just continue through, background memos to you and updates here to let you know how that's going, and just keep you in the loop on that. We'll continue. I don't know if we've told all the buildings yet, but we will be soon once we get the schedule of when they're going to be coming and what that looks like. And we just had our intro meeting today, so we're just learning a little bit more about what the whole visit's like. I don't know if anyone has a question about that.
You start off by saying we've been selected.
Yes.
Do we?
That's my way to spin it in a positive way.
I guess,
but
so
why? How do you get selected?
Yeah, was it random? Did we do something wrong? Did we do something right?
It's nothing about doing anything wrong. So they have helped me out if I remember incorrectly from what the webinar said. But basically, they only have a certain number of schools in the Commonwealth, right, or school districts. So they start with that list, and then they say, oh, who's already having a targeted review? They all get taken out. Who has another, I'm trying to think the other reviews, there's like a Title I review. They all come out. Who has a NEASC review? They all come out. And so it dwindles down. Then they look and they say, all right, who's been reviewed in the last 10 years? They're out. And now you're narrowing it down, they said, to this pool of districts. And then in that pool of districts, they say, okay, how many are from this type of region, this type of region, this type of district? And then they select that. And then over the course of like the 5-10 years, you eventually get selected. And that's really the only way. So it has nothing to do with anything that could have come up in any other plans. It's just the whittling down to who they can do and how many they can do with their members in a year.
Sounds like jury duty.
Yeah, right, kind of, yeah. So, here we are, and we're very excited about the opportunity to learn about ourselves. It's, no, I will say, but it's different. It's more intense, I think, right, because it's broader, it's a whole comprehensive review. So if we were selected just for a targeted, they'd just give us a couple standards, and then would just be targeted on those standards. And sometimes targeted might be because something came up and, they're coming back, but the advantage of this, honestly, and that's why it's in our strategic action plans, the advantage is this is going to give us additional information. Some things we already know, right? One thing we have to submit is the capital plan. We know we don't have a capital plan. That's why it's in our goals and we're working on it. So they come out and say, you need a capital plan. Yep, we know that. And others, they will observe and they'll come up with some standards around instruction or curriculum or what people say in the community. And we go, okay, that's really helpful information to help us with our cycle of continuous improvement. So it's actually perfect because we'll have that info, hopefully, within our strategic planning process. So what I'm going to have to figure out with that is how many other focus groups do we do for strategic planning? It'll depend on like what kind of info we get here. So we're not overburdened in 2 months with all those focus groups.
That's kind of what I was going to ask you is this going to be more about giving consultation back to us, or is this like an OSHA review where they use your materials to test the next district review?
That's a good question. What they'll do is, from what I understand for someone who just went through it, after they do those classroom observations, and she didn't say this today, but they, a month later, got some preliminary information just about like what they were seeing. But we'll get a full report. And that report is just for us. It is a public document. It's part of DESE's review because DESE has district standards, and you'll see all the documents we have to submit are all in the regulations. So that's why we have the DCAP, and we have, CPAC, and we have different things that are part of regulations, and so therefore we'll submit and they'll check to see that we're doing all the things we're supposed to be doing. And if we're missing something, then they'll just give us that feedback, and that'll be some part of our continuous improvement process that we go through. So it is a good thing.
When was the last time we did it?
No, I've been here about 10 years, so never since I've been here. So it used to be called like the EQA, but we haven't done this.
We did an ES just 5-6 years ago.
2015.
It's always helpful.
I don't know if we did one earlier. I seem to remember a review process when I first started that was around this.
It could have been right in about that time, yeah. So,
okay, great.
All right, so we'll keep you posted. And then next up, we have Kate Riordan here to talk to us about.
I won't even sit, I'll be quick. Hi, how are you? I'm here. My every other year Italy trip will be next year. It is the exact same itinerary that it always is with Explorica that we always use. The price is a little bit more than it usually is. Some of that is because world post-COVID costs a little bit more. The other part is because if you do notice there is the private group fee added in, which normally I never added in because I know I'm gonna get my 40 students. But the last 2 trips I just did, I had 17 and 19. And so I was a little worried because then we had to consolidate with another group. So this lets us, as long as we have at least 25, that price stays the same. And anything we go up over, the price starts to come down. So it's the 203, which is on the back. If I get to my 40, everyone gets $203 back. So back down to a more reasonable price. Let's see, things that were, so it is a normal itinerary. We do have the academia visit was added in to go see the David, a cooking class in Florence. All the tipping is included. The Travel Protection Plus plan, because after COVID, that was the best plan. So now everyone that is expected, everyone has to get that. So,
No one's getting sick of Italy?
no, that's my big one. So I really think I'm gonna get to the 40 and that $200 is gonna come off. But what happened last year, I only had 17, so we had to consolidate with another school. I like to travel with just my students and only have to deal with my circus. And so, yeah, because we had to I had the cooking class for last time, but we had to drop it when we added into another school. So I want my students to be able to do we plan to do, so. We'll get there, we'll get to the 40. I think everyone's securely, no testing to come back to the US, so that's good. My trips were fine last year, but I know the other trip, they did have some students with COVID, so hopefully that's not a problem. It's the best trip ever.
I'd like to make a motion.
Great. What motion would you like to make?
Our trip is great.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Thank
Look
you
at
very
that.
much, I
Passes.
appreciate it. Andiamo.
There we go. All right.
And the last portion, Jen D'Angelo was going to present on this, but she's out sick today. So I'm going to do the overview here with my counterpart, Jay, on the money part. So we're going to fill you in on a few things happening with pre-K numbers and some upcoming staffing needs. So we have an immediate need right now in the next month to increase the capacity in our pre-K program. And this is just at Memorial for 3-year-olds. Just to give you a little background, we have in the morning is our 3-year-old section, and then we have the 4-year-olds during the afternoon. And so currently there are 8 students with special education services and 7 students without special education services. So we always want to have the balance between the 2 groups, and the maximum number of students that you can have in the pre-K is 15 students. So though we're compliant right now with the total number of students, the number of students without services should be the larger population. So we're currently evaluating 4 additional students right now, and it's possible that then we're going to be heading over that threshold. So in order to service all eligible students in accordance with state guidance, we need to add an additional 3-year-old class just at Memorial. This would require an additional educator and a paraprofessional. What we would do is, some people say, well, how do you have the other students that would end up joining? We would hold a lottery to fill the 9 seats for our students without special education services. And then we'd be able to split up the classrooms where it would actually be 2 classrooms now with a 6-to-8 ratio of students with special education services to students without special education students. So we would have that better ratio that we're looking for. And that also gives a little bit of window, provides 2 additional seats for any students with special education services that might enter later on, potentially in the year. Sometimes we might know of students before and we try to do our best to anticipate, and other times, you have students that are just moving to town, or things, they're requesting it or just getting evaluated, and then next thing you know, there can be that shift throughout the year. We always have a little bit of that window when we're setting up the classes, but here we have more than we've had in the past. So now I'm gonna do the handoff baton to Jay on the financial aspect of that.
All right, so on the money side of this, teacher, we put some prices that Maureen provided to you. That was prorated based on approximately 7 months of school left. The net cost for the teacher and the paraprofessional is a little over $30,000. We'll round up to 31 for discussion. If we can fill the 9 tuition-based seats, we would reduce that by 18, almost 19,000 as far as tuition coming in, again prorated over the last 7 months. So our net cost would be around $12,000. Obviously, if we can't fill all those tuition-based seats, because there is a possibility that parents have found alternatives at this point, our net, the worst case scenario is just going to cost us around $31,000 to do this. We have to keep in mind that this
And then the best case scenario.
is 12,000. Right. Yeah,
I just wanted to end on that
said
part.
that.
I know, but I wanted to.
So now, the second piece to this, though, is this is adding a 0.5 position this year that will end up becoming full-time next year, because you will have the students move up to 4-year-olds, you'll have 3-year-olds. Again, maybe not, maybe we won't have that many 3-year-olds coming in, but that's what we should probably anticipate as far as costs. As far as how we would pay for this now, it certainly wasn't in the budget. We do have a fairly healthy balance in our preschool revolving account that comes from tuitions. So I would say initially we would fund it from that. depending on how the year goes and how the budget lines are going, we may end up moving that cost back into the operational if there's funds available for it, and then we can plan for it for next year within the budget. The way it works right now, the teachers are paid out of the operational budget, the paraprofessionals are paid out of the preschool account.
Questions?
So you said that, Maureen, that the students without services are supposed to be the larger number in the classroom. If we don't fill the 9, how would we accommodate that balance issues? Right? If we don't get the additional students that don't need the services, we wouldn't be able to have more without services in the classroom.
I think you will be able to, because you'll still have 2 classes and you can split up the kids on IEPs into 2 different sections, and same with,
She didn't,
with
I feel like I
tuition-based.
asked her that question. She didn't feel like that was going to, I mean, I
Right.
guess there is always that potential that would be, she didn't think that would be an issue.
It's kind of an ironic little thing in that we're required to provide services to the students on IEPs, and we can't force people to pay tuition and come to our preschool, so you could always have that risk, and I'm not sure there's a lot that can be done about that if that's the case.
We've always had enough
Yeah.
interest that it might even go to that lottery, and we would advertise, right? So we would get all that information out to re-advertise that we have these openings, and typically we'd be able to have families that would be interested in it, that or maybe thought about it, or might be able to switch. And it does cost less for them in our pre-K in comparison to other private pre-Ks, so there's that kind of incentive for some families as well. But I'll bring that question back to Jen too, just to see, if I'm missing something on what we would do for advertising, or, what happens with that.
These are all students in our community?
Yes,
They
are, but, yeah.
The
But
tuition base could be from anywhere.
tuition could be, so normally we get enough out of our own communities, but that is something that we could advertise externally if we wanted to.
But if
For the
someone
pre-K.
came in that was tuition based from outside of our community, are they considered a choice then?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so, because you're paying to come here as opposed to school
Yeah, I don't
choice,
think
which is public
the pre-K
education.
is.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I don't think so, but,
But as we move up through the
yeah,
grade,
I'd
through the system.
have to look into that and just see if
Yeah.
there's any, other implications to that.
And so what is the
Hopefully we might
need,
not need to do that.
what is the need driving this right now?
We are already at our threshold of 15 in that class.
Yeah.
So that's one, and the ratio isn't there. And then we have students that are, prospective students coming in being evaluated in special education right now, that some are likely going to qualify, which then puts us over, and we wouldn't be in compliance if we didn't make that shift right now.
They're gonna qualify, but if we don't have the room, do we have to take them?
Yes.
These are children that need, specific individual assistance or,
Yeah,
support.
from our communities.
It is
yeah.
required
From our
to make
community.
term grades.
There are certain parameters around, qualification and all of that, but if they meet all those qualifications, then it would go over it. And so we anticipate that, and we're already at that 15 and the ratio isn't great, so we think that's,
Well, the ratio will remain not great.
Right.
Let's just
yeah.
look at it in a realistic, pragmatic way. I mean, I know we like to look at the best case scenario, but that's like my fantasy player, really got boom on that day. That didn't happen last weekend.
Well, sometimes they would get.
Sometimes.
But is the ratio piece, is that regulatory or is that best practice?
Regulatory.
Yeah, so we'd have to address it.
So if we didn't have a pre-K program?
Oh, you have to have services for 3-year-olds and up. That's a state law.
Okay.
So the fact that we have tuition-based kids coming in is what helps support that, cover some of those costs.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask how it works in terms of, traditionally Upton kids would go to Memorial, Mendon kids would go to Clough. Is there any crossover in the preschool? Can we cross over? Not ideal, but is that?
We were looking at it, I asked that question too, because there was this sense of, could we look at it maybe, it's all pre-K, and are there different ways, so it's not just Upton or just Mendon. And what she shared was the services that the students were requiring in Upton are at the Upton building for some of the services. So it made sense to not do that. That was one piece of it that came up in our conversation.
Yeah, the other piece is we have to transport the students to and from school, and if we were bringing students from Mendon to Upton for this, we would probably have to eventually add a bus. So you're talking $90,000 or so to add a bus. So if we can keep it in-house, that's the best way to do it.
For the lottery spots that are students who are not requiring services, those could be open to kids in either town.
Yeah, we don't have to transport them.
And then the ones that are requiring services, we get funding from the state how?
Probably part of the Chapter 70 formula as far as special education. We don't get a lot based on, 12 kids. Or
Okay.
we have, if we
So
have.
they are,
When you
the
go
question I
through
asked,
that-
are they part of the foundational
Yeah.
formula?
They're counted in the enrollment that's submitted.
But not the ones that are not part of the services group. So that component, we would then get some level of funding to offset cost off of that as well. It'd be negligible.
Right. We did talk about this, I want to say if it was a year ago or even 2 years ago, about the need to add a second preschool program at Memorial. And I think we kind of just said, all right, we're going to have to hold off on this at that point because we were right at the edge. But now it looks like we're going to go across that edge fairly good.
Does this effectively increase the number of choice spots we'd have to make available for grade 4, 5, 6?
As far as I know, this has nothing to do with choice.
Yeah, because currently they're all Mendon-Upton students.
Well, they're all Upton students.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that answers that question.
What was, do we know offhand between the two schools going into this year, what the number of kids we couldn't take? Paying students?
That I don't know, even how many people we had. to
Yeah,
turn away.
I remember, personally, my kids went through it a long time ago, it was a coveted program, right?
Yes.
You kind of wanted to get into the lottery, but do we have 3 kids that didn't make it or 30 kids that didn't make it?
I think,
Because that would help with that
I did
revenue
ask her
number.
that question when we met, and I don't remember, but it was closer to the 3 or 4. It wasn't the 30. Yeah. Because when we were asking about how many were interested that might still be interested, when I asked the question to fill the 9, it wasn't above the 9, it was a few, but I think with advertisement, we'd be able to increase that.
Dumb question, how do you advertise?
It used to be the town.
Used to be, yeah, I mean, these are the pediatricians or?
Yeah, lots of different ways to do that,
You
yeah.
haven't seen the blinking neon sign up?
Yeah, right, that's what I say, yeah, spots available.
Facebook.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
Yeah,
this is,
we have not done that, but.
this is for kids in the community, then it seems that we have to do something like this.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you need from us?
Probably be
Pat on
good
the
to, probably would be good to just have a motion just to approve that, to formalize it.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Are we spending?
Well, it's a budget issue, so
Yeah.
you're in essence going to appropriate funds for an additional position, so.
Motion to appropriate funds for additional position to support pre-K.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, motion passes.
Thank you for that, and if you have other questions that come up after, feel free to send it to me and I can send it to Jen and we can make sure you get the exact answers on that too.
We should probably, I have a feeling that
And she's
we-
coming to the next meeting
Okay.
too, so, to present.
We should probably net out what the additional expenses have been, because we did approve for an assessment. I mean, these are starting to add up.
You want me to get the Addy tape going?
Yeah, let's get the ticker tape running here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. That's it. I do not, we don't need. I'm sorry. New business. Moving on to new business. The Misco Hill Middle School.
Double whammy in one night.
Look at that.
Can't get enough.
Hi again, everybody. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to talking to you about our school improvement plan. We're super proud of where we are at NISCO and also know that we're lifelong learners and looking for growth in the work that we do. So this year's plan reflects our big rocks for this year and the things that we're trying to look at with sharp laser focus to see if we can improve and get better in these areas. So the first one is around project-based learning, and we are working with the PBL Works Leadership Network. This is year 2 for us. If you remember, we were selected to participate last year based on our application process. And we are working with them through workshop models, sustained support visits where all of our teachers were trained to get to have some coaching and feedback, as well as what we call learning walks, where members of our smaller team, collaborate with members from other districts and other cohorts to see what we can learn and teach each other. So as you can see from the students' presentation, designing a Pbl unit is hard work and participating in a Pbl unit is hard work. And we think it's that high cognitive demand that makes this instructional practice worthwhile in terms of our pursuit of it at NISCO. There's 7 elements to what they call a gold standard Pbl project. So you try to start with a challenging problem. You can go backwards. Just this slide is all Pbl. Challenging problem or question. So you could see that the question was how to improve little learners' playground in the presentation that you saw. And a period of sustained inquiry. And that is where teachers are able to provide instruction around frameworks. They try to web that and embed that into students' research and exploration. There's an element of authenticity. So I think you heard Zach talk about real world problems in the textbook, the kinds that you and I had to solve, if a train was going this way and a train was going this way at certain speeds, or if you have to bake a certain number of cookies for a friend versus solving a problem that will enrich the experience of our students in our learners program. There's elements of student voice and choice. Students are making decisions based on their research. They're creating iterations of their solutions. And they're allowed to follow the pursuit of those choices to see where it leads them. And often there's a choice of topic or problem that they're pursuing. There's always time for reflection, which we know is one of the things that makes learning stick. We need the brain to process and file that new information connected to previous learning. And I think we talk about the importance of, I hate this word failure, but failing forward. And I think reflection allows us to take a look at what worked, what didn't, why are both of those things true, and therefore what will we do next. There's an element of critique and revision, which I think is an essential skill for students to be able to put their product out there in front of somebody. And we are fortunate in our work with Dave Quinn that we can engage students with professionals in the field who are willing to spend time offering students critique and suggestions for revision. So there's a nice additional element of authenticity to it at NISCO. And then ultimately you go public with your product. We're really proud of our students tonight for going public with their process so far. We are engaging our staff in a similar project or process. Mr. Cuomo, who's at Nature's Classroom tonight, not gonna get much sleep tonight, I bet, but I'm a little jealous. But he and I are working with our faculty to redesign what was Project Block. So our staff created a vision for Project Block last spring, and now we are in the process of working toward that vision. So grade level teams have been tackling it on their own, and then we get together and find different ways to give each other feedback and learn from each other's iterations, reflect and absorb, and come back with another iteration. So it's pretty incredible to see the kinds of stretch that teachers are doing in terms of what Win Block can look like and become. We really think that PBL allows us to engage kids in critical thinking and interpersonal skills. We know Nick and I did an offering in August on the PD Day around, we called it PBL, POL, UDL, Holy Acronym Batman, because those things we know can all enhance and overlap if we do them well. And we saw great evidence of that with the participants in that workshop. So that's part of our goal. And we feel like in addition to our Inspired Learning Days, which our students love, our faculty loves because of the experiences that they provide, we think PBL allows us to engage students in learning experiences that inspire them to think beyond what the textbooks have to offer and really innovate as they iterate. So keep working on this practice. think it's gonna take us great places. Do you wanna do questions after each goal, or do we just go the whole way through?
I think you just go all the way through and save our questions.
You got it, I'm gonna charge ahead. So our next goal relates to engaging in cycles of inquiry based on evidence of student learning, typically after common assessments, with the intention of adjusting practice based on student needs. So this year, we are flipping our approach a little bit at NISCO. In the past, we've started with big data like MCAS and used that to create a big exploratory question and then funnel down. And this year, we're flipping it. I read a book called Street Data over the summer, and she describes the street level, the map level, and the satellite level of data. And we talked to teachers a lot about it, start of the school year, in terms of all the data that they have at the classroom level, observational, formative, summative, and how we can use that data. So our department chairs worked to create a protocol that they could use with faculty, and we talked about the question, what do you see as patterns and trends in your role? And an example is one grade level offered making inferences in reading is an area where they see students need to grow in their skills. And so now they're digging in to create strategies and intervention to promote that skill. So it's a way for teachers to lead up, I think, and drive some of the work and identify what's needed at NISCO. Last spring, we used that map level data, our iReady data, to look at patterns and trends, and we were able to identify that across the school, nonfiction text analysis and comprehension, and language acquisitions and vocabulary were areas where we weren't performing as well as we would like to. So we had a team really dig into that data. They created an intervention where they came up with word lists based on roots that were common across their curricula. And they had, the ELA teachers would do a word attack with a word one day, and then all the other content areas would use that word in class the next day. So the kids were getting multiple exposures every day to new words and new academic vocabularies, whereas tier 2 vocabulary. In addition, they also worked on nonfiction text analysis, looking at graphic elements, things like that, across the grades band, every content area. And we did see, whether it's connected or not, a significant shift in our assessment data at that satellite level in terms of our MCAS scores in regard to that team's work in that grade span. So we're hoping that this multi-tiered approach really allows us to identify not only learning gaps, but instructional gaps, and come up with solutions to those things that we can do more on the shorter term to have a hopefully more timely impact and greater impact. Sorry, can't see anymore. Our third goal, I think we'll always have a communication goal because I think the homeschool partnership is so important. So we are looking at, the standard describes it as frequent, proactive, consistent, and culturally responsive communication, and how can we grow in that regard. So we started with something low level and easily attainable. We looked at email and format for email, and what should our community members expect to receive from us in forms of communication in regard to email. And then we dove into PowerSchool a little bit and started to have conversations around PowerSchool and how it really can't be the wild, wild west in there. We need to have some consistency around how we're using it to report on student progress. So Nick and I dig into it every week. We kind of see what's going on in there. We share out with staff what we're seeing. So very quickly, we realized if a student doesn't turn something in and a teacher doesn't put a 0 in as a place marker, that student looks like they're passing. And so we talked about the need to put that 0 in, even though it feels harsh, with an icon explaining what's going on there so that there is true communication. We talked about identifying assignments in standards-based or frameworks-based language so that from the title of the assignment, parents can get a sense of what's being studied. Increasing our communication in terms of updates and what we're working on a curriculum so that what a parent sees in the update is reflected in PowerSchool so that they can support at home the learning and sharing strategies for doing so. So a sample here of a recent update from our 5th grade team, just as one avenue of communication, but knowing that teachers are looking at through all their communications through that lens. The addition of Kim Lopes as EL coordinator for the secondary level has been tremendous already in terms of impact. So I think we've had our most culturally responsive open house so far. We had a translator for every family. And we had a board set up so that when the family walked in, they saw their name, the translator's name, we had the student's schedule, the room number, and they could find each other through that board. And then we had prepped teachers on what it's going to look like to have translators in your room participating and how to establish norms around that, and just got some really nice feedback from families in regard to how that all went. So super happy with that piece. And engaging parents in our use of data for progress monitoring. So what we see in PowerSchool and what we're showing parents in conversations or conferences, we know that data is going to become a really important communication tool, more so than it has been in the past. And our last one, revise and redesign units of instruction to include the skills reflected in the I CAN statements to create deeper learning experiences. We really feel like in terms of the portrait of a learner and the skills embedded in the competencies, that idea of transfer is paramount. So we want students to understand explicitly, I am developing this skill. There are skills to collaboration. There are skills to being a global citizen that I can develop and grow in, and I can monitor my growth in those skills because I have a coach who's offering me feedback and allowing me to reflect along the way. We did some of that in our professional development that we offered earlier in terms of, we had teachers look at the I CAN statements for the portrait of a learner competencies in terms of their project design. Most people quickly latched on to collaboration and problem solving, which are natural partners with projects. And then we asked them to stretch their thinking, to pick the competency that seemed the most challenging to embed into their unit of instruction. And with some collaboration and time together, they really were able to develop that within those units. So we feel like this work, we're planning on spending the next half day really focusing a lot on this piece, will be pretty pervasive and impactful in terms of students becoming aware they're not only developing the content, knowledge, and skills and frameworks, they're also developing all these skills of being college and career-ready citizens. So that is our last one. That's it.
Great. Questions? Thoughts?
All right, I'll ask a question.
Go ahead. Thank you, Eric.
I think you said data is important and to get in the hands of the parents.
Yes.
Are you guys starting to think that you'll share iReady data readily with parents?
We're starting to think that we're going to share data around progress monitoring. So iReady is an important element of progress monitoring, but it's one data point and it's a point in time. So we are really looking at that street level data and figuring out what we noticed and what we wonder, and then is it corroborated in what we're seeing in iReady? What's happening with MCAS at the student level, at the instructional level? We're looking at our curriculum maps to see what that data shows us in terms of, do we need to make revisions to our scope and sequence, should we understand the breakdown of the frameworks in terms of the content and skills? Have we created an intentional spiral grade to grade so that we're increasing the rigor? So I think in terms of sharing with parents, we want to share a whole picture of your child, what their strengths are, and where we're heading next in terms of areas of growth. So iReady is a piece of that. It's challenging to share iReady as standalone because it takes a lot to understand how that data is used, what we use it for, what it represents. There's layers and layers and layers below that piece of paper that are really important. So I think rather than mail home a document, I think we really want to engage parents in the full conversation, the full picture. So I think that requires
more support data.
Yeah, we're talking about what does it mean to be data literate in your role, and then how do you use that in your partnership with families? Yeah.
I love the shift to the street level. To me, it means our classrooms are less controlled by I think we're going to learn a lot more about what our students' actual strengths and weaknesses are versus
It's incredible to see it in action because we started this work in August. And I went into a team meeting the other day and they were looking at an individual student, and through their collective conversation and collaboration, they realized that a pencil to paper assessment was challenging for the student, but orally, the kid knew everything that they were assessing. So we talked about strategies to put paper in front of the student so that they can collect in any way they want to what's going on, and then take the pencil to paper assessment, sit next to the child, go through it orally, and you find out a true assessment of what the child knows. So it's not about the test taking piece. We find out it's about this child's strength as a learner. We also talked about another student who we realized through the assessment data we had that vocabulary was a concern. So we talked about how do we pre-teach that vocabulary? What methods do we use? Because we know this child's a visual learner, so that that vocabulary is sticking. It becomes part of their working vocabulary versus a word bank assessment. So it just to walk in and see those kinds of things happening feels really good. It feels like we're getting there. You know, the train's on the track, and I feel like we're really moving forward. So it's been exciting.
And
Talk a little bit about, I'm sorry.
can I do one
Sure,
follow-up
sure.
question?
Yeah.
With the MTSS structures that you have in place, do you feel like you have enough programmatic support for that kind of work?
I'm so glad you asked that, because we did a deep dive on that in the spring, because we looked at our proficiency rates. And we know they're not bad and we can do better. So we listed out all the systems that we have, because it's multi-tiered systems of support. So what are all the support systems? And it's a long list at MISCO. So then the big question becomes, why? Why do we have all this? And this is what we're seeing. So it really drove people to dig in and look at why. So I felt like there was an accountability and an ownership that emerged from that. And then when we were working on MTSS, we realized we have an RTI team, response to intervention team, and that's something that, again, we're revamping. I don't know if I've ever worked in a district that has had it nailed, but we had this aha moment where we looked at MTSS and realized it's academic, it's social emotional, it's behavioral, and we're lumping all of that into RTI. So RTI this year is going to focus on academic, supporting the child and the faculty and the family. And then we have our student assistance team who can focus on the social emotional. And then we need to create a behavioral team because now we have a BCBA, we have lots of expertise in the building. We have a new adjustment counselor, so, and there's overlap there, of course, but I think we'll be able to create more intense, effective interventions, understanding what the systems are, knowing the systems relate and connect. Yeah.
So last week, we talked a little bit about bubbling up the street level data and seeing what the impact was on MCAS scores, which it sounds like a miracle, but I love that idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there a definition of street level data, and how do you consolidate it, aggregate it, and analyze it?
That's a great question. I'll give you some examples. Definition-wise, I feel like, I always think of it as 3 tiers. So biggest data, state standardized tests. Mid-level data are things that we do benchmarks. So we have a fall benchmark, winter benchmark, spring benchmark for iReady for math and ELA. So that's sort of that tier 2. The street level or that tier 1 data is pretty much all the formative things we call it, like quizzes, exit tickets, anecdotal records that teachers take, summative assessments, projects, things like that. I think that the
So it's mostly qualitative information?
Mostly.
It's not measured based on a metric, it's more qualitative.
It depends, like a lot of it is rubric based, things like that. But I think the secret sauce is when you have high functioning teams who are able to get together and look at that data and talk about what does it show us? Does it really? Does it really? What else does it show us? So I feel like we had a team bring cold writing samples to the table. Nick and I attend their strategic team time and their student team time, which is where much of this collaboration occurs. And talk about what do you see? What do you see as strengths? What can they actually do? Let's look at the standards. Here's what the standards say are the skills for this grade span. What do you see these kids are able to do? Let's start to sort. Okay, these kids can. These kids are almost there. These kids aren't there. Or 80% not there. We gotta look at our curriculum now. If 80% are not there. 20% are not there. We got learning gaps. We gotta figure out intervention, what to do for these 20%. So I feel like that street level is where the expertise of the teacher really comes into play. I feel like when we started at the MCAS level, we came out with great questions, exploratory questions, and then we would spend a lot of time digging and trying to find additional data points to support or refute. But I feel like we weren't getting as much bang for our buck when we were going that way as I feel like we're going ground up, because I feel like sometimes a teacher will say, I can tell that, and you can't really quantify how they can tell it, but they're right. So when a teacher says, we have trouble with inferencing, and we dig in, it turns out they're right. So we feel excited about it. It was the first time I felt teachers really excited about data. After the staff meeting, we were introduced this idea, people came up after, made a point to say, like, this feels like the right way to go, this feels really good. You know, we say, what they call it, the D word or not. Yeah, thank you.
So how will we measure impact?
big data, tier 2 data, street level data. I think we talked to Maureen and Cheryl, they've been instrumental in our process in terms of how do we capture it so that we have a place where we can analyze those tiers, because you do have to analyze across tiers, and you still have to analyze individually within tiers. So we'll look for improvement in our MCAS scores. We'll look for improvement in and growth in terms of iReady. And then we'll look at how our instructional practices are impacting learning at that tier 1 level. And do we need to make shifts in instructional practices, or do we need to revamp our intervention system where we can do it differently?
So we'll start to be able to see the iReady data from a proficiency levels. I mean, we see the MCAS data. I mean, you showed iReady data last year, and then we asked questions like breaking down by grade levels and a lot of different dimensions. So we should be able to do that and start to look at the progression and the impact growth, performance growth in those areas.
So,
Am I thinking about that the right way?
yeah, so we were, again, we won't necessarily present street level data like here at school committee, but we'll, hear about what's happening. But Cheryl will be presenting the MCAS data.
Yeah.
So that's the next meeting, and then we're looking to do it a later meeting and dive into some of the traditional ones that we've been collecting, like iReady or some of the SEL data when we have that, the panorama data too, to see some of the trends and areas as well. And then that will jump into, if you want, in that alignment piece with the work that we're doing with the data and the inquiry cycles that we're working on this year that Jen probably explained better than I can. You really brought it to life for me when you described it the other day, and I had shared it with a couple of them what I meant. Yeah.
We have additional data points because the IT team helped us get the AMOS dashboard in Power School. So now, all in one spot, we have a color-coded red, yellow, green system where we can look at attendance, discipline referrals, missing assignments, low scores. So our school counselors, when they attend student team time, are able to flip open their laptop and say, okay, let's talk about so-and-so. And we can easily look at all those data points as we do our exploratory, because a lot of that's street level.
Well, I guess part of my question comes from this, is the ability to simplify what is that initial starting point. And I know and I realize it's not just an MCAS score. There's iReady stuff, there's other stuff that's there, but the ability to put that there so that we don't all of a sudden, 1 year is like, oh, we made great progress on, this, and we redefine what the measures are.
Right. So I think you're looking for that through line. So if they identified the street level, we're working on inferential skills, then we're going to look to see that reflected in iReady and
I
MCAS.
think I agree with your point. I think the street level data is not necessarily something that's boiled up into kind of like a benchmark starting point.
Right.
It's more of an insight area where you're gaining understanding as to what's working, what's not, where are we missing, where do we need to focus at a more detailed tactical level versus a higher strategic level. It's a question of kind of how is student performance improving and how are we measuring areas. I mean, that's the whole basis of why we brought iReady in. We have a cast and things like that. So part of it is when we start to see that stuff. So we see it already. I missed it. Maybe I missed it.
Well, I mean, we could flip it, but we were going to do the MCAS data at the next meeting.
No, that's fine. I just
at the one after. So.
There was an example that you talked about, I thought, at the meeting where you'd already seen some of the.
Right, so we've been looking at
Yeah.
it, we just haven't come forward to present it here. So, the results from MCAS as an example just came out, a couple weeks ago. So all of these meetings, we've been meeting and looking at it and looking at that. And then they just completed the iReady beginning of the year. We have an assessment calendar piece that we work on with our inquiry and when we have the assessment. So they just completed that. It's helpful later on in the year to come back to it to look at some of the growth pieces when we targeted areas. We're doing that internally all year round, so that's but periodically we can, we'll continue to come here too.
And this will be our third year of iReady data for the students.
Yeah.
One of the nice things Maureen and Cheryl created was a district assessment calendar, so we have all the things that we do. And this year they added analysis windows after each benchmark, so that as a leadership team, we can dig into the data together and then we can bring that back to our buildings and calibrate K-12 that way a little bit more.
Third ready in the middle of COVID too.
Yeah.
Third grade,
in
yeah,
the middle of
yeah,
COVID, right?
absolutely.
So it's a little bit skewed.
But
It
not
shows the impact. It's still a benchmark. Correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
at a macro level and micro level.
Okay. Great.
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on. Subcommittee updates. Policy subcommittee, do we have any update there?
Yes.
Okay.
So we held our superintendent subcommittee evaluation meeting last Thursday. After a quick review of the process and procedures, Dr. Cohen presented her proposed goals to the subcommittee, and we discussed the timeline for her evaluation. With the presentation goals that just happened, there'll be a mid-year review in January, and then beginning in February, there will be an alignment of the mid-year report with the district action goals. And then I think the process concludes in May with the traditional report submitted by, or the review submitted by the consolidated report. Last year, Dr. Cohen was evaluated on her goals in the educator evaluation timelines. So now she presents a review of the goals that we approved last Thursday for the committee as a whole to vote on.
So I was gonna give a brief overview of the
Sure.
goals, is that all right?
Great.
So in the packet, in your background notes, I gave you a link to the full goals with the key action items, benchmarks, indicators of success. I'm gonna try not to dive into all of the individual elements of it. I'll kind of speak at a high level, but happy to answer any questions. And one thing you'll know, you'll see a lot of alignment with directly with the district strategic plan, so you've already an action plan for this year, so you'll see that. So if you can go to the next slide. So one thing as a reminder, we mirror, for the most part, or the goal is to mirror the continuous improvement cycle with all of the educator evaluator plans that we have and cycles that they go through. So here we're in that October to November phase where we've gone through, we've already presented in September the district plans, come forward, I propose to the subcommittee these proposed goals, and then we implement the plans, and then what we're gonna add in this year, which we didn't do last year because of all the timeline with everything, we'll have a typical mid-year district update, like mid-year update, right? So you'll see the progress on our district goals, and then also the progress we'll meet as well regarding my personal goals. And then we're going to keep the timeline that we did last year, right before the election, town election, we would have that summative evaluation that would be submitted, all of you would submit that with feedback, leads into my self-assessment again, and then starting off. So we'll meet as a subcommittee a few times throughout the year so we can talk through how things are going. And I definitely appreciate the feedback that I received the other night, so thank you for that. Go to the next slide. I like to show this, and I think I doubt any district does this any better than we do. I know that's a strong statement, but we really live by our district strategic goals. And you hear it, we talk about it, it's in every one of our meetings, you know, and we really do live by those, and you see it show up everywhere. So one piece that we'll add in when we meet on school committee goals, you know, think about like when we have that workshop, that piece would be adding in. You'll see that you'll soon see the alignment with the superintendent goals. And then I meet in the next month with our district leaders and our principals around their goals and look for alignment coming through as well. And then as you see, much of which was very strategic for me to present this after Jen, because she just presented a lot of the work that we're doing. You'll see that alignment with the school improvement goals there, and also alignment with the principal goals. And then you have from the strategic plan and down, you have the educator goals too. And you often will see a lot of the conversations that are taking place. You have educators who are making goals that have alignment to a lot of the work that we're doing. And so It's, I think we do a really, really nice job with that, and it is a
Just
true,
for what it's worth, on the seminar I took with Joe
Yeah.
on superintendent evaluation, we are way ahead of anyone in that room. So I agree with you.
Good.
100%.
I always like to be the best, so that makes me happy. Can you go to the next slide? All right. So what I did, I ran out of room, so I couldn't really I wanted to sort of show you this, alignment as well, but I talked about the district goals at a previous meeting. We had it linked to kind of our categories of understand, support, engage, and then we have the fourth category of communicate and plan. When I'm about to go through my 4 goals, you'll see my student learning goal is aligned to those goals 1, 2, and 3, which are really in that student learning area. A lot of my specific work that I'm doing myself that I'll talk about and leading directly is going to fall in the goal number 4 around the strategic planning and capital planning and some of the communication pieces as well. But I'm involved in all of the district plans, but just to kind of show that. And then you have, when we meet with administrators and school improvement goals, I'm looking for that alignment when I meet with them as well. But just wanted to remind you of that as I go to each of the 4 goals. So the first one, so in the packet, I kind of outlined how it typically would work. Typically, you have a professional practice goal, you have a student learning goal, and then you have 2 to 3 district goals that are kind of, the work that I'm doing. So I'll look at the district goal and think about the work that I'm leading within it, when we look at the stakeholders that are leading aspects, and that's how I developed kind of the superintendent goals that I'd be focused on here. When I had a couple things I was thinking about originally for the professional practice goal that I talked to the subcommittee about, and one area I realized that I've been spending a lot of time on, even at the start of this year, was related to communications. And I was thinking, what am I learning a lot about? So I'm learning a lot about facilities, but I'm going to be doing a lot of work with that, and that's new. And last year, my professional practice goal was around budget, learning a lot about, some, budget and presentations and communicating about a budget. But here, I'm spending a lot of time spending time with Apogee and Drillshare. That's our website. I'm going through trainings with them, meeting with them very regularly, meeting with a rep with our PR firm that is now working on press releases. And so I meet with him every 2 weeks, and I realize, and then I can go to sessions with that organization and find out more about different ways that school districts can communicate in crises or different ways. And a lot of that is focused in that website development, but also the counterpart. By the end of the year, our goal is to work on a branding guide so we can have more consistency with our logo. You can see it showing up at a lot of our events. We're trying to do that. You saw it with Misco Hill as well. It's great. You see that nice alignment. So a lot of that work, our original logo was developed with Apogee. And so they said, I met with them, and yeah, we can work through and work on some branding guides and work with you on it. So I realized that's an area that I'm spending a lot of time working on, but still have a lot to learn. And felt like that is a good place for me to focus on for my professional practice goal for this year. The next goal, you've already heard a lot about this when Jen was speaking, but I'm working closely with Cheryl and in her leadership and our leadership together, and with all the principals and with the leadership team around all the aspects of MTSS, in particular the strong use of data in the data inquiry cycles, and really developing more systemic structures for those conversations, sharing protocols around data, and working with the teachers. And I'm finding as well that, where we have multiple meetings that we've been involved in, this is a lot of the direct work that I'm doing is within that leading of the observations in classrooms, but also in conversations with leaders around that and around what we're seeing with Tier 1 practices and targeting different aspects that are showing up from the data, but also in support in our leadership team meetings and also these data meetings as well. So we've developed the assessment and inquiry calendar already. That's one of the steps, and Jen mentioned it. I swear I didn't tell her to mention all these things, but she mentioned a lot of our steps already because we've already started some of the work on that. But that's the way that I'm directly involved in the leadership and working with the principals closely. So some things that I mentioned last year that we just started, we brought back kind of doing learning walks
in the buildings with the leadership team. So I'll do that 4 times. We meet every 2 weeks. So once a month, then we'll be in the buildings doing learning walks. So those learning walks are going to be very closely tied. One, we're going to look at some of the tools that they're using with the district accountability review for their observations. I asked them to give us some feedback on what they look at, but also we're focusing on the tier 1 practices too, and some coming out of the data that we're studying this month. So I'm really looking forward to already seeing some positive changes in our conversations. And what Jen said, this is the first year I've really heard teachers just embracing data as like in a really positive way. It can be overwhelming the first time, but after a full year of access to really strong data the last year and lots of PD that Cheryl organized last year, I think we're well poised for that work. Goal number 3. It's pretty straightforward. This is around the strategic planning. So we have, we're in our, as you know, the 5th year of our 5-year district strategic plan. And so in order to, a lot of the action steps would be me organizing and leading that strategic planning work. I've done this before in previous districts or been hired in other districts to lead that work. I feel very confident in this area, and we feel that we have a strong base and foundation with the aspirational work that we did last time, but we also want to bring in more technical aspects as well of work that we need to do. That's going to come out of a lot of our studies this year related to facilities and budget and long-term planning, and from the comprehensive review. We'll get a lot of great info with that. So we'll be using, it's called the Planning for Success model. You can find it on the DESE website, but it's like a backward design. You'll all be invited to participate in that if you so choose and be part of that process as we go through that. We were going to start it originally this month or heading into November. We're going to hold off on that and get through the district comprehensive review. Once we do that, then we'll start reaching out for members of the community to start planning that out. And then the last goal, which you've already heard a lot of work on this. I think, we've been bringing up a lot of these aspects purposefully. It's the work that we're doing. It came out of my entry plan last year. We have representatives from We Care, MISCO here. We know we have an older building that, needs a lot of work. We know we have fields that aren't where they need to be, working with the MUCP. We know that we have upcoming capital needs with the roofs and different lists that we've shown you. So our goal is going to be bringing that all together, forming the capital planning subcommittee, getting more information from Habib and Associates, and I'll be working to help you and help us, work together to have a solid plan by the end of that year. And so as part of that work, anytime, so when I go to MASS, MASC, I go to every MSBA session that they have. I just went to one last week. Anything that's related to facilities, I went to one at MASS this summer, learned a few things about facilities. It was really helpful. I brought it back, shared it with the principals. So I'll continue. That'll be some of my targeted PD as well. If there are any opportunities where we can learn more about how to do this better, that I'll be focused on that. So those are kind of high-level view of the 4 main goals and a lot of the work that I'll be doing this year on top of all the other stuff that we do. But I'm feeling pretty confident about these. So I'll take any questions if you have them or feedback.
Questions? All right, no questions.
Really?
Yeah.
See, it's like I expected somebody that wasn't on the committee to start asking questions.
It's very comprehensive.
Thank you.
I'll give you, these are all very real goals, which sometimes I struggle with, sometimes these are all very measurable, and I think they're a great set of goals.
Thanks, I'll take it. Thank you.
In that case, I move that the committee accept the superintendent's proposed goals for the current school year.
Second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And is that the first motion?
Away we go. Do we have any other subcommittee updates? I don't believe we do. Okay. Well, do we have any other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours? Nope. Correspondences?
If I could jump in on correspondence for just a second, I'm gonna direct this to Maureen and Cheryl since y'all are here. I've had some community members reach out for some follow-up on some of the SEL supports that kids are getting in district schools. Wanting to know, they've heard a lot that we've talked about with the data gathering through Panorama and through Thrively and the lessons that are available, but wanting to know what that looks like, boots on the ground in the classroom, understanding things like the elementary school. I think it's probably easier for us to identify with some of the things that are happening in the classrooms. I'm forgetting all the names of the programs now, but just wanting to understand a little bit more about what interventions are being provided for students to continue to support that social and emotional growth following what we knew was a really traumatic couple of years in education. So whether that's something you feel like you can answer tonight or if it's something that we can talk about maybe at a future meeting.
Maybe, I think the best way, I could give you a few things, but I don't think that would probably fully answer the question that people are seeking based off of what you're saying. So maybe there's something that we could come forward at a future meeting, and maybe there's something from our counselor, our counseling staff as an example. We could, they're the ones, those are the boots on the ground that are doing that work, and our adjustment counselors and school psychologists, and they work in teams, and we have our wellness weeks and we have other work that's taking place, but I can kind of reach out and see. I know that Jen D'Angelo, I can't remember if it was this week or she was scheduling a meeting with the whole district team within these, couple of weeks to kind of get a sense of what their needs were and what they're working on. So I can reach out to her and find out, and then, we could come forward and give some updates. And if there are other specific, questions, feel free to, send them my way, or they can reach out and I can, make sure I'm meeting the questions needs too.
Well, I think it's because everybody has been so stressed. Parents are feeling stressed, students are feeling stressed, staff, all of that. It's kind of nice to get a refresher just as to what we're doing to support that and the skills that we're trying to teach kids. And, I feel like I've got a really good high-level picture of what we have available, but maybe not necessarily as clear a picture of how that's, operationally happening in the building. So I think even as a school committee member, I'd love to hear how some of this, I think it's part of your goals too, is to report back on how some of this Panorama and Thrively data is being used. So I think it fits into that and the conversations that we're going to be having for the course of the year. But
those are valid questions. I guess the question I would ask is, on November 7th, we have a student support services update. So wouldn't that be an area that we would delve into that specific topic?
Well, yes and no, because I think it's also bigger picture what's happening for the general education population. Like I know, I'm forgetting the programs that are, what is the ones in the elementary school?
Like second step.
Yes, yes, exactly, those kinds of things that are happening in the classroom, embedded in the
we are
morning
making
circles and things
we are
like
making
that.
some shifts too,
Yeah.
especially with new leadership at one of the schools. So one thing you'll see, if you go on Twitter, you'll see it, but that there's a lot more focus this year on morning meetings. That's an example, which wasn't always a focus, right? Which is a classroom strategy where a lot of that work is done in an intentional way. So that is, we can definitely learn more about some of. So they're making some shifts of what they've been doing. So that's one shift that they've made at that level. And then at the middle school, I'm telling you, the addition of another wellness teacher is like a game changer for us in being able to offer more for students. So that's something that we could follow up and have you see. I can visibly see it when I go through the classes, but that's pretty exciting. And then some pieces when you heard Jen talking about Amos as an example. So that's another data source. And when they come together, that use of data that's very intentional is taking place in those strategic meetings in a more intentional way than I think we've had in the past, and they've updated some of their systems. So those are a few things that just come to mind. I mean, we always have at the high school, we have advisory, and we are always looking at our Metro West health data. They just gave us a new update, like a shorter sheet just this week. I was just looking at it to see, areas that we could focus on, and that goes back. I send it to the counselors. It's work that they do in some of their meetings. So I can gather that. I haven't asked about that recently, so I can definitely find out more, and we can come forward. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And maybe Alyssa's homesick too, when she's watching, we should remember to put that into future agenda items. If we put it on the bottom, even if we don't know what date it would be, then it'll just help us to try to plan that out. I do have a planning document that I work with the team on to schedule out some of these things, but that could be helpful for us too.
Be much appreciated.
All right. Any other things? Nope. Okay, so future agenda items, presentation on the district accountability data and the student support services update, along with the Nipmuc School Improvement Plan, all on November 7th. Stay tuned for our next meeting. All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned, 8:41. Thank you.